Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something that can really impact your life, often without you even realizing it.
Yeah, high conflict personalities.
Exactly. We're going to break down the five main types based on Bill Eddy's work and really look at why spotting these patterns is so important.
It's about protecting yourself, right? Avoiding becoming what he calls a target of blame.
Precisely. And if you've ever been in those situations, those interactions that just leave you feeling exhausted or confused,
Or even questioning your own judgment.
yes, this deep dive is definitely for you. We know you want to get up to speed quickly but thoroughly.
And that's the plan. We're diving into Bill Eddy's audiobook, Five Types of People Who Can Ruin Your Life. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding these tricky personality types.
And not just understanding, but knowing how to handle them.
Right, how to navigate things more effectively.
So, our mission today is pretty straightforward. Equip you with practical knowledge, how to spot these individuals, understand what makes them tick,
Their core traits.
and crucially, how you can protect yourself from the potential fallout.
We'll use examples from the book, real-life stuff, plus the analysis, to give you tools you can actually use.
Okay, let's get into it.
So first off, let's just talk about how common this is and, frankly, the dangers involved with these high conflict personalities, or HCPs.
Right. What defines an HCP, according to Eddy?
Well, he talks about a few key things. Extreme all-or-nothing thinking is a big one,
Black and white, no gray areas.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Then there are intense emotions, but they're poorly managed. Really extreme behaviors, sometimes even threats.
And the blame game.
Oh, yeah. A
Mm.
constant focus on blaming others for everything, never taking responsibility themselves.
And the numbers. The book mentions a statistic that's kind of, well, startling.
It is. Roughly 10% of people, it suggests, have this potential to be highly destructive.
10%. That's 1 in 10 people you might interact with.
Exactly. It makes you think, doesn't it? And they're everywhere.
That's the other thing. It's not like you can just look at someone's job or background and know.
Not at all. They cut across all demographics, all professions. Could be anyone, a neighbor, a boss, even a relative.
Which makes spotting the actual patterns of behavior so critical, rather than just judging by appearances.
Absolutely vital. You have to look deeper.
The book also suggests we might be sort of more vulnerable now than in the past. It mentions 4 big societal shifts.
That's right. It's an interesting perspective. First, think about mobility. People move around so much more.
So you don't always know someone's history.
Exactly. Vanishing personal histories, he calls it. We build relationships without knowing the full backstory, the connections they used to have.
Okay, what else?
Second, those traditional social safeguards are, well, eroding. Tight-knit communities, big extended families.
Places where people knew each other and reputations mattered.
Precisely. Those structures often acted as early warnings or helped manage difficult people. That's less common now.
Makes sense. What's the third shift?
The rise of digital deception. It's just easier now, isn't it, to create a whole persona online.
Appealing, but maybe totally fake.
Yeah. Makes us more susceptible to being fooled or manipulated.
Mm.
And fourth, this one's interesting, is how entertainment portrays difficult characters.
You mean like romanticizing the abrasive boss or the charming rule breaker?
Kind of. Or suggesting these dramatic, unrealistic redemption arcs that just don't happen often with real HCPs. It can skew our expectations of how people behave or change.
That's so true. We see these fictional turnarounds, but reality is often much messier, especially with these personality patterns.
And these big shifts, they interact with our own basic human tendencies, things that make us vulnerable.
Like what?
Well, our default setting is often trust, right? We tend to give people the benefit of the doubt initially.
Okay.
Then there's compassion and maybe a bit of tribal bias. We tend to favor people in our group.
And emotional gullibility. What's that?
That's Eddy's term for how easily we could be swayed by strong emotions, even if those emotions are being deliberately manipulated to get a reaction from us.
Wow. Okay. So the combination of these societal changes and our own psychology kind of sets the stage.
It does. It potentially makes it easier for HCPs to cause disruption and harm in our lives.
Right. So we're in a world where HCPs exist, our old defenses are weaker, deception's easier, and we have these natural vulnerabilities. Let's dig into the specifics then. The 5 types Eddy outlines. First up, the narcissistic HCP.
Okay, the narcissistic HCP. Think of the core mindset as, I'm superior and you're basically nothing.
Ouch.
Yeah. It's driven by this deep belief in their own superiority, a constant, intense need for admiration.
They need people looking up to them.
Constantly. and a real lack of empathy. They struggle to understand or connect with other people's feelings.
And the book gives figures for narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, something like 6%.
Over 6% have NPD, yeah. And he estimates about half of those show these high conflict behaviors. So it's not rare.
That's a fair number of people.
It really is. And Eddy breaks them down further into two subtypes. It depends on how they react when they feel their flaws are exposed, what's called a narcissistic injury.
Okay, what are the two types?
You've got the vulnerable narcissist. They tend to lash out immediately, very defensive, aggressive, right there in the moment.
And the other type?
That's the grandiose narcissist. They might seem cool, calm, collected on the surface when criticized,
Right.
but they're often seething underneath. And they'll likely retaliate later. It's more calculated, spreading rumors, sabotage, maybe even lawsuits.
So the book warns against, like, publicly shaming them.
Definitely. Because that need for control and validation is so strong, provoking them can lead to a really nasty delayed revenge. Understanding the subtype helps you figure out how to disengage,
Right. A quick break might work for one, but you need to be wary of payback with the other.
Exactly. Documenting things becomes important with the grandiose type.
We've probably all met people with some of these traits. The book uses an example, someone called Jason, and a woman, Jen.
Right. Jason starts this really intense whirlwind romance with Jen, who wanted to work in TV.
Seems great at first, then what?
Then boom, he just cuts it off abruptly. Says he's not interested in friendship, accuses her of just wanting to use him for connections.
That sudden switch is a red flag, isn't
It's a
it?
huge one, especially when you later find out he got fired and arrested for assaulting female colleagues. It shows how even one instance of extreme behavior needs to be taken seriously.
And the book notes certain professions might attract them, ones with prestige or power.
Yeah, things like medicine, law, academia, politics, places where they can get that admiration and sense of importance.
So, besides needing admiration and lacking empathy, what other red flags should you watch for?
Okay. Constantly putting others down, maybe disguised as jokes or helpful criticism.
Backhanded compliments.
Sort of. Also, big claims about how great they are, but without real achievements to back it up. Never taking responsibility for mistakes.
Always someone else's fault.
Always. And seeing the world in very stark terms, winners and losers, basically. Emotionally, you might just feel uneasy around them, stifled, or like you're starting to doubt yourself.
That feeling in your gut.
Trust it. So, if you think you might be dealing with one, what does the book say about avoiding trouble?
Good question. What are the strategies?
Well, first, just slow down. In any new relationship, personal or professional, don't rush. Take time to actually get to know them.
Observe them over time.
Exactly. Ask open-ended questions about their past, their work, family, see how they react. Do they get defensive, angry?
Gather information.
Yes, and if possible, check your impressions with other people. Don't just rely on your own view. Keep any praise you give measured, not over the top.
Don't feed the need too much.
Right. And crucially, set clear boundaries at the very beginning. See how they react to limits. Do they respect them or push back?
That's a good test. Okay, that makes sense. Don't get swept up. Watch the behavior patterns. Let's move to type 2, the borderline HCP, the love you, hate you type. Sounds intense.
Intense is definitely the word. Borderline personality disorder, BPD, is actually pretty common too, around 5.9% of the population. And again, Eddy estimates over half show high conflict traits.
So, what defines this type?
Think intense, unstable relationships, dramatic mood swings, up and down very quickly. A really deep fear of abandonment.
Which can make them desperate.
Yes, frantic efforts to avoid being left. Also, impulsivity, acting without thinking things through. And something called splitting.
Splitting.
Yeah, it's seeing people or situations as either all good or all bad. No middle ground, no shades of gray.
Like an angel one minute, a demon the next.
Pretty much. It's a way they manage intense emotions, by simplifying people. But it makes relationships incredibly chaotic.
And like the narcissistic type, there are subtypes here too. Conventional and unconventional.
That's right. Conventional borderlines might show more obvious signs of struggle, maybe trouble holding jobs, more visible self-destructive acts. Their instability is often clearer to more people.
And unconventional.
They might look really successful on the outside, high-functioning in public, well-regarded. They mask the instability.
But behind closed doors?
Exactly. People very close to them, partners, family, they get the brunt of the intense emotional outbursts, often triggered by small things.
The book uses Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada as an example.
Yeah, that rapid switch between being charming or helpful one minute and then unleashing rage the next.
Offering opportunities, then threatening to fire someone.
Precisely. And how she idealizes staff, then suddenly devalues them. Praising, then betraying. That captures the instability and the splitting really well.
And the real-life case, Kara, who married Tom.
Yes, another whirlwind romance. Kara pushed for commitment very fast, ignoring Tom's feelings about the speed. That was an early sign.
What else?
She constantly blamed others for any problems in her life. After they got married, her moods became extreme, intensely loving one day, hostile and critical the next, for no clear reason.
And it ended badly.
Very. She kicked him out suddenly and filed a restraining order based on totally false accusations. Shows the potential for extreme, damaging actions.
Wow. Okay, so dealing with this type, or suspecting you might be, what are the key strategies? Avoidance, management.
Crucially, pace the relationship. Don't rush into deep commitments. Heed those early warnings, the extreme statements, the intense reactions, the history of unstable relationships. Don't ignore them.
And boundaries.
Absolutely critical. Set clear, consistent limits on behavior and enforce them. When you interact, try hard to stay calm yourself. Don't react to their emotional extremes that often just fuels the fire.
Avoid getting sucked into the drama.
Exactly. And trust your gut. If something feels consistently wrong or unsafe, listen to that feeling. Protect yourself. The emotional roller coaster is exhausting and destabilizing.
Walking on eggshells is the phrase people use.
Very much so.
Okay, that's really helpful. Next, the antisocial HCP, the cruel con artist. This one sounds potentially very harmful.
They certainly can be. Antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, affects maybe 3 to 4% of people. The hallmarks are a real disregard for rules, laws, social norms.
They just don't care about the rules.
Pretty much. Deceitfulness, manipulation are common. Impulsivity again. And a striking lack of remorse or guilt about hurting others. Plus, a need to dominate and control people.
The book mentions sociopaths versus psychopaths.
It does draw a slight distinction. Suggests sociopaths might have some empathy, but maybe only for a very small inner circle. Psychopaths, it says, lack empathy entirely and might even enjoy causing harm.
But for practical purposes.
For self-protection, Eddy basically says treat them as equivalent. The danger and the manipulative patterns are similar enough that the distinction doesn't really change how you need to protect yourself.
And the examples are pretty stark. Ted Bundy, Bernie Madoff.
Right. Bundy shows the charming but deadly side. Madoff, the massive financial manipulation side. Both showcase the core traits.
There was another example, Paul.
Yeah, Paul had a criminal history, robbery. Then he reappears, claims he's turned his life around, starts soliciting donations for some cause.
But it was a scam.
Totally fraudulent. It highlights that pattern of antisocial behavior often repeating, even if it's masked by charm or good intentions.
So what are the specific red flags for this type? You mentioned charm, ironically.
Yes, be very wary of excessive charm, especially if it comes with dramatic sob stories about being a victim, or if they quickly start asking for big favors or help.
Okay.
Listen to their language. Do they try to undermine your self-worth? Play on your sympathy. Watch for inconsistencies in what they tell you, and claims about secret activities that you can't possibly check. Big red flag.
The trust me line.
Huge warning sign.
Yeah.
Especially if they haven't done anything to earn that trust.
So given how manipulative they can be, how do you manage interactions? How do you identify them safely?
Verification is key. Check their claims independently. Be deeply skeptical of flattery or quick attempts to build trust. Research their background if you can.
Be careful if they push you towards risky things.
Definitely. Protect your boundaries, like Fort Knox. Be firm, really fun, in saying no to unreasonable or exploitative requests.
And when setting limits.
Rely on external things, rules, policies, facts.
Yeah.
Get support from trusted people. Don't try to manage it alone based on feelings. And if you feel unsafe, have a safety plan. Know who to call, what steps to take.
Okay, that's crucial advice. Moving to the paranoid HCP, the highly suspicious type. This sounds exhausting.
Incredibly draining, yes. Paranoid personality disorder affects about 4.4% in the U.S., though not all are high conflict. The main thing is this pervasive distrust and suspicion of everyone.
They think people are out to get them.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
They interpret motives as malicious, constantly fear betrayal, even with no proof. This leads them to blame others defensively and hold long grudges.
The book gives the example of Albert Licata, the deputy marshal.
Right. He became totally convinced his elderly neighbor was plotting to rob him. No basis in reality.
And it escalated.
Massively. He started extreme self-defense measures, lost his job over it. His paranoia spread to doctors, pharmacists. It shows how irrational and consuming it can become.
And Monica, the coworker.
Similar pattern. but in the workplace. She quickly became suspicious of colleagues. Her boss, Joe, saw malice in neutral actions.
Leading to complaints, lawsuits.
Exactly, all based on unfounded fears. It created a toxic environment, showing the workplace disruption they can cause.
Trying to argue with that level of suspicion must be impossible. What strategies work?
The book suggests the CARS method here. C is for cost. Connecting cautiously, even being friendly, can be seen as suspect, so tread carefully.
Okay.
Analyze their options, or at least their stated concerns. Understand their perspective, even if it seems irrational. R is respond calmly and factually. Don't get defensive that just feeds the paranoia. Stick to objective facts.
NS.
Set firm limits. Base them on external things like company policy or objective reality, not just your opinion. And crucially, avoid directly arguing against their core paranoid beliefs. You likely won't win, and it can make things worse.
Focus on the facts and external rules.
Exactly.
Okay, last one. The histrionic HCP, the dramatic type, center of attention stuff.
That's the core, yes. Histrionic personality disorder prevalence estimates vary, maybe 1.8% up to 8%. The key is an excessive need for attention.
How does that show up?
Dramatic, exaggerated emotions and speech, but often it feels shallow, lacking substance. Their emotions shift rapidly and can seem insincere, and they tend to see relationships as much more intimate than they really are.
The examples were quite vivid. Amy's mother, Nayan, at the funeral.
Yes, her over-the-top grief, the accusations, then suddenly switching to faking health problems to get sympathy and attention back on her. Classic histrionic behavior.
And the mother in the custody case.
Her dramatic behavior and unstable relationships directly impacted her ability to care for her kids. It shows the real-world consequences beyond just being dramatic.
So specific red flags for histrionic HCPs.
Look for extreme hyperbolic language. Worst ever, amazing, everything is dialed up to 11.
A very theatrical, emotional tone.
Yes, and creating a sense of crisis or urgency around things that aren't actually urgent. General attention-seeking behavior in groups. They often hate ending conversations because the focus shifts away from them.
And blaming specific people, but subtly.
Right, often with plausible deniability. Makes it hard to pin down.
So how do you interact without getting pulled into the drama?
The book suggests BIFF responses. Brief, informative, friendly, firm.
BIFF.
Keep your communication factual. Avoid emotional arguments. Offer limited, clear choices if you need to guide their behavior.
And boundaries again.
Always. Base them on logic or policy, not feelings. And be ready for emotional outbursts when they don't get the attention they crave. Don't let it derail you.
Okay, BIFF for histrionics. That covers the 5 types well. But the book also talks about negative advocates. Who are they?
Right, this is important. Negative advocates are people who get emotionally hooked by the HCP. They defend the HCP's bad behavior without checking the facts themselves.
They just buy the HCP's story.
Pretty much. They take on the HCP's emotions and skewed view. Could be family, friends, even professionals, therapists, lawyers who think they're just being supportive.
And they actually make things worse for the person targeted by the HCP.
Absolutely. They validate the HCP's narrative, which encourages them. They might pressure you to give in to the HCP. They can spread gossip, escalate the conflict, basically become amplifiers for the HCP's harm.
So how do you deal with them?
Often the CARS method again. Connect with empathy for their position, not necessarily agreeing. Analyze their perspective. Respond with calm, factual info. BIFF responses work well here too. Set limits on the conversation if it gets hostile.
Maybe bring in someone neutral.
Sometimes that's the best bet, yeah. A trusted intermediary.
And the book warns us not to become negative advocates ourselves, right?
Yes. Be careful when someone comes to you wanting immediate backup against someone else, especially if it's all emotional one-sided.
Get the other side of the story.
Or at least more information. Seek second opinions. Don't get pressured into taking sides without understanding the whole picture. Resist just echoing their anger or upset without thinking critically.
Good advice. Now, what about getting help? If you're dealing with an HCP constantly, does regular therapy always work?
The book suggests general counseling might have limitations here. While it helps with stress, it might not be specialized enough for deep-seated personality disorders or high-conflict dynamics.
So look for specific therapy.
Yeah. Therapists trained in things like DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, or schema therapy often have better tools for these specific patterns.
And finding positive advocates.
Crucial. People who support you objectively, friends, family, counselors who offer validation, but don't just jump in and escalate things or enable the HCP. You might need to teach them how to be supportive effectively in this context.
And accept that not everyone will get it.
That's a tough one, but yes,
Okay.
some people just won't see the pattern, or they might even blame you. Focus your energy on those who do understand and validate your experience.
When explaining it, focus on behavior.
Yes. Concrete examples of recurring harmful actions are much more effective than just saying they're narcissistic or getting emotional. Maybe pick the 3 most troubling, consistent patterns.
Like the example of Angelica and her boss, Dr. Rogers.
Exactly. Her wife became a negative advocate, her cousin was dismissive. But when she went to the ombuds's office and focused on specific behaviors Dr. Rogers displayed, she got help.
The book also asks, why now? Why does this seem like such a big issue today? It talks about the HCP theory.
Right. The theory basically suggests that the brain wiring behind some of these extreme behaviors might have actually been useful, evolutionarily speaking.
Useful? How?
In times of war or extreme danger, maybe that rapid, all-or-nothing, highly emotional response was needed for survival. Quick, decisive action.
But not so good in modern peaceful society.
Exactly. Becomes disruptive, maladaptive. The theory also links the apparent rise today to our rapid social and tech changes, amplified by media that often focuses on conflict.
Normalizing aggression, maybe?
Potentially, yes. Constant exposure to conflict can shift norms.
And the brain science part, hemispheres and trauma.
Yeah, it touches on the right brain being more rapid, emotional, and the left more analytical, logical. Normally, they work together via the corpus callosum.
That bridge between them.
Right. But the theory suggests severe childhood trauma, like abuse, might damage that connection, impairing the ability to shift smoothly between emotional and logical states.
Which could contribute to the emotional volatility seen in some disorders.
That's the idea. And therapies like DBT might actually help strengthen those connections again.
What about nature versus nurture, genetics or upbringing?
The consensus now is it's both. There's a strong genetic component, maybe 40–80% inherited risk, depending on the disorder. ASPD seems particularly strongly biological.
But experiences matter too.
Usually, especially early childhood, attachment, trauma. They shape how those genetic predispositions actually play out. Evolutionarily, maybe some traits like dominance or situational lack of empathy were survival advantages before complex language.
And modern culture might encourage some of these behaviors now.
Possibly. Individualism, media focus on conflict. It might inadvertently reward some HCP traits. Though the book also notes disruptive people can sometimes challenge bad systems, like some tech leaders with difficult traits.
So it's complex. The book really stresses developing personality awareness. What is that?
It's basically learning to recognize these extreme patterns. They often seem like something else at first: strength, charm, just being eccentric.
So you learn to see past the surface.
Exactly. The WEB method is a tool for this. W is words. Listen for blaming, all or nothing language. Emotions. Notice the intensity, the appropriateness of their emotions. And your emotions when you're around them. That's a big clue.
And
Behavior. Look for actions that are outside the norm, the 90% rule, stuff most people just wouldn't do. And gather info from multiple sources if you can.
paying attention to your gut feeling with each type, like frustration with borderline, unease with antisocial.
Yes, those specific emotional responses you have can be really telling.
So once you have this awareness and you recognize the patterns, it boils down to choosing your response.
Precisely. You assess the harm, think about your goals to the relationship, if any. If you have to engage, use those strategies like CARS or BIF.
Prioritize respect, offer choices, stay firm, but factual.
Yes, it's about responding strategically, not just reacting emotionally.
This has been incredibly useful, a really thorough deep dive. So to wrap up, the big takeaway is recognizing these 5 types, understanding their core traits. It's powerful knowledge.
It really is. It gives you tools for self-protection, for navigating difficult relationships much more effectively.
And for you listening, hoping to get informed quickly, we really hope this breakdown of Bill Eddy's work has given you that clear, structured overview. Empowering, hopefully not overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Maybe take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Do any of these patterns ring a bell? Maybe revisit parts of this, or look up CARS and BIF for practical tips.
And a final thought to leave you with. We live in a world of constant change, digital connections. Is developing this personality awareness, this ability to read these human dynamics accurately.
Is it becoming just as vital as, say, digital literacy? Something to think about?